Welcome. Over the last few explainers, we've really dug into AI business models, the insane costs, and where all the value ends up. So today, we're going to zoom out one last time. We're not looking at just one company, but the entire system, the whole AI value chain, from the silicon all the way up to the software. Because, in any tech revolution, if you understand the value chain, you understand where the power is. And power is what decides who wins.
So that brings us to the big one, the ultimate question. Who actually controls this whole AI system? And look, this isn't just about who's got the smartest algorithm. Not at all. It's about who holds the real structural leverage across the entire stack. To figure that out, we first have to understand how these value chains actually work.
Think about any major industry, whether it's energy or the internet, there's always a value chain, and the profits and the control, they are never, ever spread out evenly. Some links in that chain just become way more valuable than others, and that's the real secret to understanding who's going to come out on top.
And this right here is the core dynamic. Some layers of the chain just become commodities. They're interchangeable, and all that competition drives the price and the profit way down. But other layers, they become bottlenecks. They're essential, they're super hard to replace, and everybody else depends on them. These are the spots where power and profits just pile up. And the AI revolution, it's following this exact same pattern.
So, to map this all out for AI, let's picture the system as a big, four-layer pyramid. We're going to start at the very bottom with the silicon and work our way up to the apps you and I use every day. And as we go, you'll see exactly how that power flows right up through the system.
So here it is, the AI pyramid. Down at the very, very bottom, the foundation, we have semiconductors, the chips. Right on top of that, you've got the cloud infrastructure. Then you've got the foundation models, the things that actually provide the intelligence. And finally, right at the very top, you have the applications that we all interact with. Let's start our deep dive right at the base.
Okay, let's begin with those two bottom layers, chips and the cloud. This is the deep, heavy infrastructure of AI. And believe me, it is incredibly expensive to build and to operate. And that cost, it creates a competitive landscape that looks totally different from what we see at the top of the pyramid.
So, at the absolute base of all of this is silicon. We're talking specialized chips like GPUs. Without them, there's no model training, there's no inference, there's no AI at scale. It's that simple. The barriers to entry here are just extreme. You need massive capital, years of R&D, and this creates scarcity, which gives the very few companies playing here huge pricing power. This layer isn't just foundational, it's a huge deal geopolitically.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? Just like oil powered the Industrial Revolution, silicon is the essential, finite resource that's powering this new intelligence revolution. It's a hugely capital-intensive resource that entire nations and giant corporations are all fighting to control. This leads us right into the next layer up, the cloud. You've got providers like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, and what they do is they gather up all those powerful chips into massive data centers and then rent that computing power out to the world. Their advantage is just enormous economies of scale, which makes them a critical choke point. They control access to compute, which is basically the fuel for all AI.
Okay, so now let's climb to the top of the pyramid, the frontier. This is where we find the models and the applications. This is where all the innovation feels like it's happening the fastest, where everything is most visible. But, as we're about to see, the ground up here is way less stable.
Right, so the model and the application layers, this is where AI gets its smarts, and it's where we users actually interact with it. So yeah, they sit closest to the customer, and they're closest to the money. But they face just relentless competition, crazy fast technological change, and a pretty dangerous dependency on those infrastructure layers down below. They're powerful, for sure, but they're also really vulnerable.
When you put them side by side, the contrast it's just stark. The infrastructure layers, chips and cloud, they have these extreme barriers to entry, which creates stable, durable profits protected by a deep structural moat. The application layers, though, the barriers to entry are low. That leads to volatile margins and a moat that really just depends on brand and distribution, things that can disappear in a flash. The takeaway is simple. The deeper the layer, the stronger the moat. And this brings us right to the heart of it. We've seen the layers, but where does power really concentrate? Well, the answer lies in identifying the bottlenecks. This is basically the physics of power in any value chain. So, what exactly is a bottleneck? Well, think of it as a layer that everybody else needs, that has very few alternatives, and that you can't just easily replace. It's this unique position that lets it charge a premium, basically capturing a huge slice of the value created by the entire system. So just remember these three things. A bottleneck is hard to replace, It's essential for everyone above it, and there are few, if any, good alternatives. Advanced chip manufacturing? That's a perfect example. High-scale cloud infrastructure is another one. Applications, on the other hand, they almost never become these true structural bottlenecks.
And this all leads to the central rule of the AI age. If you control a bottleneck, you control the economics of the entire system that depends on it. This is how you really understand where power is truly piling up. So knowing all this, what do the biggest players do? Well, they try to vertically integrate. They try to control multiple layers of this stack. They're designing their own chips, running their own cloud, training their own proprietary models, and launching their own apps. Why? It reduces their dependency on anyone else, and it lets them capture profits across the entire chain. It's a pure power play for compounding leverage.
So let's wrap this all up and get back to our first question. Who controls AI? It's really not about having the smartest model right now. It's about owning the structural leverage points inside this incredibly complex value chain. But wait, you might be thinking, what about open source? Well, its impact is not spread evenly at all. Open source is having a huge impact at the top, dramatically lowering the barrier to entry for models and apps. It's democratizing innovation up there. But it does very little to change the scarcity of chips or the massive scale advantages of the big cloud providers. It's democratizing innovation, but not infrastructure power.
And we really have to remember, this is not just some corporate battle. The AI value chain is global, and it's deeply geopolitical. Semiconductors depend on these incredibly complex international supply chains. Cloud infrastructure stretches across continents. The countries that control these key layers, they gain an immense strategic advantage, which makes this a whole new arena for global competition.
And that's where we'll end it. The AI revolution, it isn't just about intelligence. It's about who controls the stack. Some layers are competing on innovation, while others are competing on pure scarcity. The future of all this isn't going to be decided by who has the flashiest demo. It's going to be decided by who controls the structural leverage points in the value chain. And as we've seen, leverage, well, leverage is power.